Onyx, text me when the recording's back up. And also,
So Rob,
we're back. We ready to continue?
Sure.
How did you guys change? Oh, sorry. How did you guys deal with the change from a small squad with its lifespan? And can you think of any systems that failed to work or interpersonal issues that you're willing to share?
So from my point of view, there has been, and I can't speak for everyone, mostly because I know that some people have had issues with other people. Um, Anyone who tells you otherwise doesn't pay attention. Uh, but that being said, there hasn't been anyone in the unit that I'm aware of that I have directly had issue with or that I have had to distance or watch myself with, basically, or like temper myself. Sorry, had to sneeze.
Oh, that's fine.
Um, so because for the most part, I get along with most people pretty well, pretty easily. I'm a very, I'm not gonna say I'm a simple person, but I'm a very easygoing person, and I mean, I've got things that'll piss me off. I got things that'll set me off that make me upset or whatever. But I do my best not to hold any grudges and not to stay mad at people. That's mostly because I don't see any point in it. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help anything if you create, issues with another person, especially if you're going to be operating with that person on a regular basis, because you're going to eventually come to a head, and then you're going to have a major problem. So that's why I usually try to be blunt with people, and I try to be upfront in my responses, in my handling of things. So it's okay. This is how I see it. This is how I understand it. If I'm wrong, by all means, tell me, because I'm not perfect. I know I can misunderstand things. I know I can, you know, take it one way when it was meant a different way. That's common. That's you know very understandable. And also, I have a very specific point of view of things from my lifestyle and my upbringing. So I know I'm going to see things differently than a fair number of other people, and maybe the way I see things is not how they. And it's not necessarily that I'm going to say, well, you're wrong, I'm right, but it's okay. Well, you have this direction and this thing that you see. Well, let's talk about it. Let's come to either a common understanding, or maybe we just get in a situation where we agree to disagree and we just leave it at that, and we don't deal with it anymore unless it's going to be a major issue. But other than that, I mean, I have friends all walks of life. I have family members who very wildly differently in ideology. So I try to be a very uh, easygoing person. It also makes my life a lot easier.
That is a good thing. Um, what was the most memorable campaign for you in an operation?
Uh, so I don't remember which campaign it was. There is one that sticks out to me immediately, and it was only because of the first operation, the first actual operation we did for it. But it was one of the first times when I was actually running as the platoon lead. And our Zeus at the time decided to throw basically a curveball at the end of it. So I threw him a further curveball and totally derailed the operation at the very end of the operation. And then that started its own whole campaign that unfortunately I wasn't able to really be hugely involved with, mostly due to certain things going on in my personal life and work life. But the first operation that we got into was a situation where the basically the entire platoon had to keep me alive. And if I died, we would have completely and utterly failed everything. and by some miracle, we drove our convoy into a number of armored vehicles that literally just decimated the unit, but I never died. I went unconscious probably like 4 or 5 times and was in and out, but I never died. So it's just, and I was the only person in the unit who did not die in that operation. And the Zeuses swore up and down that they didn't do anything special to keep me alive. But they also didn't go out of their way to send anything in my direction to hunt me down or anything. So it was just an interesting situation of events that even though my character and I was unconscious for a fair portion of the operation and staring at a black screen, it was still very entertaining to me because I could hear everyone in through the radio, yelling to get certain things done, moving around, operating, and the constant responses in the radio from like Drano and someone else, I can't remember who it was, basically saying, "Don't die, BS, don't die," and like, we're on our way, we're coming, we'll be there shortly, and then basically watching them roll in and opening fire and killing people, but then immediately getting obliterated because they were having major issues trying to pin down the armored vehicles and take them out because we didn't have as widespread spread of AT, and it was a semi-jungle area, so they were small armored vehicles, but they kept moving in and out of bush lines. So it was hard for people to maintain a view on them. So it was a very hectic situation, but to me it was very enjoyable.
With this next question, I had 5 answers from Drano and Chrome, and I will let you also have 5 answers. Do you have any memorable moments in operations, like moments that like you remember and makes you smile and laugh?
Well, the one I talked about just a minute ago is probably the main one that sticks out to me.
The
Outside of
keeping
that,
you alive one.
yeah, that operation, that's something that makes me smile. Outside of that, there's very few that truly stick out to me, like where I could actually totally give you the whole thing. There was one time that I was acting as a radio operator with Drano, and I was witnessing something happen, and I was relaying it to Drano, and I felt like I was doing a fairly good job of relaying it to Drano. And after the fact, we looked at it, and I think other people agree with me, but I'm not 100% certain on that. But he couldn't understand what I was telling him. Like it took me, I think I had to repeat myself like 3 or 4 times to get him to understand what I was telling him. So that was kind of funny and entertaining. Outside of that, there's been a couple of interactions for I should say like story events where I've done things to derail stuff, and it's been in good light where it wasn't like malicious intent or whatever. It fit what was going on, and it was kind of left field for the people I was interacting with, but it's hard to place some of them. Oh, and then also the fact that apparently I coined the phrase and the idea of code black. Apparently, that is something that stems as a kind of inside joke now within the unit of something based off of what I did and my just me basically pulling stuff out of my butt.
Nice. I did want to tell you that Drano's and Chrome's responses were like basically almost the same. I wanted to tell you them to see if you have any memories of them.
Okay,
Um, Green Van, is that
so I know kind of the whole thing with the green van. The big part about it is it's basically something that Chrome and Pavel did, where there was always a green van in the operations, and it was a specific van, and it would always be doing something or whatever. But most of the time, I never really like the whole reason it came about and started. I wasn't there for, because it was Pavel started it, and it was some kind of an inside joke that I was never actually privy to, and then they just kind of ran with it, and since then it's been the ongoing thing, and it's the same deal with like Goatman, where it's just something that was added, where it's just like a little oddball thing that they've had, and they've had it almost every single operation. I don't really know what it stems from, and it feels like it's one of those inside jokes that I'm not a part of, that I'm not on in the know.
The second one was where I believe Chrome was on an AA gun shooting down a helicopter, attempting to, and the helicopter flew behind a tower that I think Black Rhino was. Is it a Black Rhino or Dread Raven that was standing on? And Chrome blasted the tower and it all fell down.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that one.
Alright, we'll move on to the next question. Would you say the recent operations, your recent operation that you played, is of higher or lower quality of the older ones?
Um, I don't know. That's a hard question for me to answer, because we have progressed as a unit in how we do things, where we've become somewhat more organized in certain areas, and we consistently have upwards of 40 people in an operation now, sometimes almost up to 50, and that's more than we had in the past almost ever. So there's going to be different tactical challenges. There's going to be different issues that have to be dealt with and resolved. So it's hard for me to say whether we've improved or we've regressed. I'd like to think, and I would like to say that we've consistently improved in our operations, in setup, running, as a whole, as a pretty much as like a standard. But I mean, to say that it's a straight line just going up is probably way too optimistic, and probably way too you know looking at it through a veiled glass. I'm sure we've had setbacks with different things. We've tried into things that we thought would make things quicker and better, and they've not. They've done the opposite. So it's hard for me to really say one way or the other. But like I said, I'd like to think that as an overall, we have improved since the past. But I mean, that's a hard thing to say one way or the other, and that's because we for one we have significantly larger operations than what we've typically had in the past.
On the topic of larger operations, it brings me to my next question. Do you think the higher attendance is better or worse for operation quality? I think you
Um,
may have answered this, but I'm asking the question just in case.
so there has been times where larger groups has been detrimental, and there's been other times where it's been good. A portion of this comes down to also the planning of the leadership in the operations themselves, because the way we run it, we basically let the players dictate their own plan. Well, sometimes they'll make a plan that is good for X amount of people, and then you have an extra like 15 people, or okay, this plan would be great, but you don't actually have enough people to operate it. So we've run into situations like that before, and unfortunately, we've been trying to. This is one of the places where I think we've been trying to improve, is when we have a lot more people for an operation than the plan kind of calls for. We end up with a situation where you might have a number of people that are sitting around doing nothing, which is unfortunate. Sucks. One of the things that we've been trying to push is we're trying to grow our Zeus team, so we have more regular people doing Zeus's, and that allows us to be able to handle larger numbers of players, because we can keep more interaction going on. We can keep more, we can have attention being focused on multiple things at once, and it's not relying on one person literally micromanaging everything and having to be okay, got that, going back and forth, and not forgetting anything. You can delegate a lot of that responsibility to where you can have more interactions going on. So that helps with the larger pop servers now. Which, like I said, we're growing our Zeus team, so that's definitely helping. We've had some drawbacks in the past where we've grown it and then lost people, but I mean that's how everything's always going to be. We're always going to find people, and they're either going to decide to do other things, or they're going to you know go their own way, or they're going to decide I don't really want to do this action.
The final question of this section is one specified for you. How has your attendance affected your interaction with new members and the veteran players of this unit?
So I think a good way to put it would be my lack of attendance. It's definitely shown disconnect between me and a lot of the newer players as they don't know me and they only have basically a reputation to go off of, which I recently, like the last couple of months, found that apparently I've had a long-standing reputation of being a mean person and basically being a not pleasant person to be around. Uh, I've had that kind of portrayed to me by a few people, and this was people who didn't really know me and did not play games with me or do anything with me. So once they started doing that, then it was like, okay, well, this guy's actually fairly meanable and not really a jerk of any kind. At least he doesn't try to be. Um, that's how I've seen things there. Uh, with a lot of the veteran players, I mean, they for the most part know that they can reach out to me. And it was even some of the veteran players I recently found out that they even thought that basically I was this boogeyman who needed to either be avoided or just ignored because they're just not going to have a good interaction if they chat with me. Uh, which that was surprising that was even what some of the more veteran players and the older members uh, their opinions and their thoughts were, because it's like I feel like in any social interaction that I get with people, whether it's new players, old players, especially when it's not in the server itself, I feel like I usually come across pretty even tempered, and I try to come across very level headed and easy to talk to, easy to discuss with, and get along with. Um, but I guess some people, their only interactions they ever really saw of me were in the operations where I was leadership. And I'll be honest, I hit people. I've usually been a bit of a hard way when it comes to dealing with some people when I'm in a leadership role or in a support role. But and one of the reasons why I'm that way is because I know that when I do that, more often than not, people respond well to the criticism, because I know like there's one guy who was running as the platoon lead and I think I was a squad lead, and halfway through the op I ripped into him because he kept doing things that were not very smart for a platoon lead, and he wasn't really handling himself very well. And after the operation, I intentionally had another conversation with him to kind of go over what I had talked about in the op and to help him understand what was going on. And I noticed that after that point, he his attitude and his act as the platoon lead or in any kind of leadership situation had changed, and I feel like it had changed for the better. And I also, if I remember correctly, when I had the conversation after the fact, he wasn't upset with me, at least not after we had the final conversation, and he understood where I was coming at and that I was trying to be constructive and help him with it. But it's just my method of doing it is being very direct and to the point and not to beat around the bush, because I feel like you need to be direct with people. If you beat around the bush, if you sugarcoat things, they can take what you say in a different light or in a different meaning than what you meant, especially in an online setting, because you don't have a person's physical body to view or the situation itself to basically contextualize what's being said. And unfortunately, that's something that a lot of people don't think about, is that a conversation is more than just the words that are being spoken. And unfortunately, in an online situation, most people go with, well, the only things that matter is the words being spoken, especially if it's like by text or in a forum. It's hard to necessarily tell unless you know someone whether they're truly being sarcastic or if they're being a troll or if they're just legitimately uh, they don't know what they're talking about, so they're just saying what's been regurgitated from someone else. That's the same reason why I try to be very literal in my word uses, unless I know, you know, who I'm talking to. I can be sarcastic. I can make jokes of different natures. I can, the reason why there's a lot of people who initially thought that I was not a very nice person is because they don't understand why I was saying things the way I was saying or why I was doing things the way I was doing. And I also know that sometimes I can become very heated, especially when I'm passionate about something or if I feel that someone is truly making mistakes that are, for lack of a better way to put it, simple. But my concept of simple is not the same as everyone else's, unfortunately. So that's something that I have to kind of contend with sometimes.
Okay, that was the end of the second section. You want to get some water or anything? Because we're going on to the final section, and this has the least amount of questions, so it may be quick.
I'm fine.
All right, let's go. How would you describe the current state of the 55th Delta Squad?
Um, that is an interesting question. Um, so actually, to be honest, I'm not really too sure how to answer that question. Um, because I still kind of view us as a budding community, even though some people would probably argue that at this point we're no longer really a budding community. Um, we're fairly grown and developed, but I mean, it's like I said earlier, there's a lot of things where we are still improving in different things. We're still finding better ways to do things. We're still trying to move in a direction that benefits everyone in the best way. Um, but we still have problems that we deal with on a fairly regular basis. So I'm not really too sure how to answer that, because it's I don't know. It's like asking me for a State of the Union address and wanting it in a short answer, and I feel like that's not something that can really easily explained or pushed about, and that's not me, trying to cop out of answering. It's just there's a lot of things going on in the unit, and I think for the overall, it's the same thing as before, where we're constantly moving in a better and the right direction, um, and we're trying to be a place where people want to be, where they like to enjoy playing video games together, where they, you know, generally, care about having fun. Um, One thing I've been pushing, which this might also go into a part of it, is I've been trying to push us to become more of a gaming community as opposed to just an Arma 3 unit. And that's because I feel like we, as a whole and as a group, will get along better if we and we'll be able to get more going on, and we'll be able to grow the community as a whole better if we integrate other games into it outside of Arma 3. Because I like playing Arma 3, but I like playing Arma 3 in the operations, and that's really about it. Public play I don't care too much for. I like doing some of the small scale stuff where it's like some of the mod missions or the actual campaign missions in the game itself. So it's one of those things where I like doing that. So that's what I prefer with Arma 3. But at the same time, I also like there's a bunch of other games I like to play, and I don't want to just be in a situation where it's like, okay, well, I'm here to play the operation on Saturday, and that's it. That's really the only interaction I'm going to have with the vast majority of the population. Same thing why our Discord is so varied and has all the different things, has all the different talking points and everything, is to try and help people get more interaction with each other, and it helps build, friendship, helps build bonds, helps kind of intermesh people, get you a better understanding of others. So, state of affairs, I would say I feel like we're improving, getting better, and I think that's a consistent direction that we've been heading.
Speaking of heading a certain direction, do we have any big plans moving forward? Any changes we can expect, or anything else we should be excited for?
Um, I mean, there's always stuff in the works. Some of it I can talk about, some of it I can't, just because we're trying to not throw so much at people all at once. We want to try and keep things, a step at a step at a time, instead of here's a football field worth of stuff to sift through, have fun. Um, so uh, we do have some things that are kind of in the works that will be kind of cool for some people. I think they'll enjoy it. Um, but I mean, I don't know how well it'll be received. Hopefully, it'll be received well. We'll have to see when it comes about. Um, we One of the big things that I can talk about, I believe, is we're trying to push forth our a YouTube channel for the unit as a means for people to kind of get together, promote some videos, uh, create some cool content for people, help promote the unit, potentially bring in more members, maybe get some larger operations, or just to have more people in the community to interact with, play video games with, and because you never know who you'll meet or who you'll find, because it's like one of my best friends. Because I would say right now I currently have two best friends. One is from high school. The other one is a guy that I literally met playing video games, and I have actually physically met him twice in the 7-8 years I've known him. So you never know who you'll meet through gaming, through this stuff, whether it be you decide to go to conventions with them, whether you fly out to meet them. Because I mean, from the unit itself, I have physically met, I believe, uh, 5 members, 5 separate people in the unit I have actually physically met, where I've been, shake hands, hug, whatever, um, and been able to do some stuff with. So that's pretty cool. And I mean, we're a worldwide, community. We have, just in staff alone, we have South America, North America, Europe, uh, uh, and at one point in time we had South Pacific, I believe, uh, and we might even at this point where we've got, well, I think we even had someone from Asia at one point. So I mean, it's that, and I know we have actual community members from basically every continent outside of Antarctica, but I mean that has its own reasons. So you never know who you'll meet or who you'll get to interact with. So that's a pretty cool thing to help promote. Because I mean, I know personally also a couple of people who they've met their significant other from playing video games. So I mean, you never know who you'll meet. So that's pretty cool, and that's why we want to keep growing the community and keep pushing it. And I think the media team with YouTube, Twitter, and all that stuff will help promote and help push.
Yes, those media team people, they must have made some really good videos to get on the team, haven't they? Okay, moving on. It's funny because I am one of them. Have you ever gotten exhausted from being in a unit for multiple years? Has anything become bland or boring after so long?
Um, so one of the nice things about this goes back to the earlier thing where I don't have as huge. So some of the other staff are way more attendant than I am to everything going on. Where they're either they're in every op, or they're active outside of just the ops and also in the channels. So one of the things that also helps me in that is because of, I don't want to say my inactivity, but my less my where I'm active somewhat in some of the Discord channels. I show up maybe once a month to operations, maybe more if I can, sometimes less. Um, it helps to keep things a little fresh to where they're not so. Uh, it doesn't get old, because if I mean it's we're playing the same game over and over again, but at the same time I'm not always playing with the same people. Sometimes I have different. I'm either a rifleman, or I'm a team leader. I'm a squad lead. I don't always have the same people in my teams, in my squads, or I'm platoon lead, or I'm assisting someone else. So a lot of that, the bouncing around between different positions, because I don't sit in one position over every single time. That helps kind of keep it fresh and keep it active to where it doesn't get old. And then same thing as it being a large community with a lot of turnover in people that we interact with, is I very rarely have the same interaction twice with people. Um, Same thing with like being able to watch people talk about food, talk about guns, talk about certain things in current events, uh, talk about Arma, talk about other games, playing other games, doing a lot of this stuff. It helps keep it to where you're not doing the same thing over and over again. That's one thing that I don't care too much for, um, and it makes the days go by quick, but it also makes you feel like you haven't achieved anything or you haven't done anything.
Um, with the relatively recent news of Arma 4's release, do you think there is a possibility that the main 55th servers will change to Arma 4?
Um, so the obvious answer is yes. I and so the obvious answer is yes, but to make it simple, or not make it simple, but to actually explain, there is no current plan to switch over from Arma 3 to Arma 4. Part of it stems from, we try to stay up to date, we try to stay current, but if we were to switch everything over to Arma 4, we're forcing everyone in the unit to have to buy a game. We don't really want to force people to have to spend money to be active or to play. So odds are what will happen is we'll probably actually keep the Arma 3 servers, and we'll just add an Arma 4 server. That's the direction that I'm currently leaning. But no decisions have been made. No, we've had some small conversations about it. But the other thing is that right now Arma 4 is still just a thing in the window. It's not out yet. It we've had some talk about it on the internet, but it's not out yet. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know how easy it is going to be to create curated events. We don't know what the mod situation is going to look like. We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns to say a definitive Arma 4 comes out, we're switching to becoming an Arma 4 unit. Odds are what it'll be is it'll be Arma 4 will come out. We'll probably get a server for it, see what we can do, test the waters, maybe do some side ops, do some oddball stuff. And after a significant period of time has passed where we know bugs have been addressed, bugs have been fixed, we know we can get full functionality out of it, and the vast majority of the members have switched over or have also gotten Arma 4, then we'll look at going full time to being an Arma 4 unit as opposed to an Arma 3 unit. But as of right now, there is no current plans to switch off of Arma 3. It's the same thing that got asked when Arma Reforger came out. Was, are we going to switch over and go to that? We have no plans at this time to do Arma Reforger. We've talked about it very briefly, but it's not. It's the same thing where not enough people have it, and that there's too many issues with it to warrant trying to swap over. So odds are we probably won't mess with Arma Reforger at all, and we'll reassess things once Arma 4 actually comes out.
Do you think it's possible the unit may switch to a non-Armo layer game in the future?
What do you mean? Could you be more?
Currently, our main server relies on Arma 3, where Saturday Operations focuses on that. Do you believe there is a possibility that we may switch to another, let's say, realistic military shooter or another type of game and start doing those on Saturdays instead? Do you think that's a possibility in the future?
No. That's my initial response to that, and that's because I don't think there's another game out there that allows you as much functionality or as much customization in what you do to be able to do what we do in Arma 3. At least I'm not aware of another game that can let you do what we do in Arma 3. So to me, there'd be no point in switching to another game. Because you could talk, okay, well, we could switch to like Squad, or we could switch to something else. But those are almost entirely a PvP, and I'm not aware of there being any PvE elements to those games at all. So that's not really what we're going for. We don't really want to do a PvP as a mainstay. We want to do a PvE. So like Squad's not really even an option. And there's a couple other military simulator games out there that I can think of. I can't think of their names off the top of my head, but they're all the same way, where they're almost exclusively a PvP. Or if they are PvE, it's campaign driven, and it's not a customizable deal at all, not like Arma 3 is. So to me, there's just not really any. There is not another game that fits the role of Arma 3 for us to even contemplate switching to for a military simulator. I could be wrong on that. I've not done extensive research on it, and if someone could bring a game to my attention that does fit that role, and it was a relatively decent game that maybe would warrant looking into, we could. But once again, then you're getting in a situation of, well, if we switch the game to this other thing, well, everyone has to have it. Otherwise, we're basically telling some people, hey, sorry, cool, thank you for joining us for as long as you did, but I guess you're out now. And we don't really want to do that. That's kind of goes against the whole point of being the community. As opposed to saying like just other games, I don't see that happening anytime soon, of taking the role of the Saturday deal. But I mean, we have other games that people will host every now and then for events, stuff like that. We have a lot of pickup games in other games where people get together and play. I know Ready or Not is currently pretty popular. Total War is another one. I think there's a hefty group of 50 people who play. It's Plane something, or plant is maybe it's Planet something. I can't think of the game off the top of my head. I'd have to look on our Discord. I mean, there's 5 different that for starters. So I mean, it's there's always gonna be other games that kind of get played, that get dealt with, that get operated on. But I don't see anything taking the role of Arma 3 anytime soon.
I see.
Warframe. That's the game I was thinking of.
Warframe. That's a cool game.
Warframe. I've never played it.
We're moving on to our final 3 questions. They're a little bit personal, so if you do wish to skip them, you are allowed to.
PlanetSide 2. There's that one too. Yeah.
Do you ever see yourself leaving the unit while it is still active?
Um, the short answer is no. And the main reason for that is, like I said in the past, I enjoy the operations that I am a part of. I enjoy a lot of the camaraderie. There's a large number of people in the group that I do enjoy playing games with and pick up stuff and whatnot. And if I was, and as it stands right now, if I left the unit would lose its main financial back. Um, and on one hand, I don't want to do that to anyone. I don't want to shaft anyone. Basically, be like, hey, I know you guys really like this community. I know you guys really enjoy playing here, but I'm out, so bye, and the community will just die. Um, I'm sure there are people in the community who would be more than willing to step up and help pay. I've had a fair number of people offer in the past to assist with paying by donations or other things. So it's totally possible that the unit wouldn't lose financial backing at that point, but I don't see any point in worrying about it for one, because it's also I am secure enough in my finances and in my life right now that I can afford to do it while basically considering it as a something my mom always used to say, which was you pay for your thrills. And well, like I said, I enjoy the interactions with people, with the people in the unit. I enjoy the operations that I play for the most part. So I'm willing to put forth money to keep it all going and keep it growing. Um, and as long as I'm willing to do that, I continue to enjoy it. I see no reason in leaving the unit or walking away. Plus, I've never had any interaction with anyone that was so bad where I felt the need to distance myself and just walk away.
How long do you believe the unit will stay active for?
As long as there are people active.
Very great answer. Thank you.
So I know that sounds like a bit of a cop out, but that's the reality of the situation. That's the reality of almost any gaming community or any group of people. Is as long as people stay active and continue playing and continue doing things, the community itself will not go away. It won't just suddenly die one day because everyone would have to basically like, I'm done, I'm leaving, bye, deuces. That's the only way that like the unit itself will die. Uh, Otherwise, it will basically never actually die. It goes back to the same thing. If it's we've had people leave the unit. We've had people basically say, for one reason or another, that they don't want to be here or that they need to go do something else. We've had people do that. We've had probably 15 names off the top of my head. Uh, Actually, that's not right. I can think of like 5 names off the top of my head, but I know that there's a lot more than that of people who have become inactive and might show up every once in a while, or they're no longer part of the unit because of one reason or another. And yet, even with that amount of people, like I know we have removed and culled inactives and anything of people who have actually played, probably somewhere in the ballpark of 30 to 60 people. And that's people who have played in more than one operation, but over time basically either said that they want to go do something else or they just stopped coming. So it's when you think about it, it's like that's a fair number of people considering we average operations, in the 30s to 40s now. Well, at the same time, our operations have continued to grow in size, even as we've culled or removed people for inactivity, or they've just decided to leave and said their goodbyes and they've never come back. So it's one of those things where you look at that. That's why it's said is we've shown a steady growth in the unit. So as long as, especially with the site leadership, with the leadership, as long as we stay active and we continue to try and move in a beneficial direction, the unit's never going to go away. Because the other part that goes with it is we're not a company that has a product we're trying to push where it has a shelf life. or we have like we're trying to be like, we're a game company where we create a game. Well, the game's only going to be out as long as it's out until the new version comes along. We're not that. We're a community. We're a group of people trying to create something fun, but we're trying to create something fun and enjoyable with what's at hand, and what's at hand changes. So, yeah, I don't see the unit as long as basically people are active, especially this goes all the way from the bottom, the brand new people to the leadership. As long as people are active and trying to move forward in a positive direction, the unit will never die.
Do you see any potential issues financially regarding maintaining a unit as a community continues to grow, and it with it the upkeep costs? Will we be seeing any way for the community to assist with those costs through donations or maybe even merchandise in the future?
So that's also not an easy question to answer, because that. So one thing that goes down, uh, as time has gone and gone and gone. I mean, I've steadily been making more and more and more money as everything goes on. So there's that, because it's like, since I graduated college, and I've gone into the workforce, I have every single year made more money, more money, more money, more money, more money, and I've changed jobs even, and even that, more money. I have more financial responsibility to different things now than I did previously, but I also make more money than I did previously. So I probably just have to be smarter about my finances, and then it's a non-issue. Uh, Going to the community support side of things, that has so one of the reasons why I've not elected to take donations or to do anything specialty money wise, or like people bringing into to it, is partly from myself to be able to maintain a certain level of control. Um, Now, when I say that, it's basically, there's been some jokes about it in the past and whatnot, but the main idea is we are a community. We try to serve the community. We try to get community feedback in what direction people kind of want to see things move. But at the same time, the reason why I've maintained sole financial ability is so that way I can also basically come across on a number of topics and a number of things and said, this is how we're doing it. I understand the community might think otherwise or might say otherwise, but it's a non-issue. This is what we're doing. Um, because, like I said, I've tried in everything I do to keep the unit moving forward. So there's been some times where I've seen community has kind of wanted to do things or wanted to swap to whatever, where it would have caused way more headache than it was worth, or uh, where it could potentially cause issues in other places. It's also so that way I have been a major hand in dictating like the community rules. It's also partially so I can be basically, well, I'm the boss. I say what I say goes. So there is no, appellate process. If we were fully community run, there'd have to be an appellate process. There'd have to be some of these other things. Now this goes back to, I'm not infallible, and I'm always open to discussion. So if I make a decision and people think the decision is wrong, they can always contact me, reach out to me, and be like, hey, we don't think this is a smart way to do it, or we think this is a better way to do it. It's like, okay, well, let's sit down, let's have a discussion. Tell me why you think this. Tell me why you feel this way. And, we can go, okay, do we need to adjust our things? Because, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was right. And maybe they just didn't take everything into account. So there's, that goes into part of why we haven't been doing any donations or anything like that. Uh, Part of it with, and then to go to the second portion of that question, when we're talking about like merchandising, stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff that goes on in the unit is people donating their time with no expectation of reimbursement. Um, because Drano does a lot coding wise and assisting with some of that and assisting with also helping to run uh, the staff as my XO as well as the uh, tech advisor. So he does a lot of that, and there's a lot of time that he puts into it that he doesn't get reimbursed for, that he doesn't get any financial backing for. Kitten does some things, uh, and all the staff members pretty much they do put forth a fair amount of time that they don't actually get any reimbursement for. They're volunteering their time to make this community enjoyable to everyone. Well, if we start doing merchandising, will we have money coming into it? And depending on how that's set up and who's backing it, well, you could get in a we could very easily get in a situation where the unit has money coming in that could financially support uh, the monetary costs of everything. But what do you do with the excess? How do you handle the excess past that financial obligation? Now, it's pretty much a non-issue as long as the merchandising and everything does not cover the full costs and the expenses of the unit. As long as it doesn't it doesn't cover that, you have no surplus. You have no profit. The moment you start getting profit, well, then it's like, okay, well, the unit can now start to maybe give some financial reimbursement to people or do some of that. And it's how do you go about doing that when you have, you know, a dozen people all donating time to assist with different things. Um, so it can cause some weird dynamics by going into doing that, and that's something that has to be very carefully approached if we were to do that.
All right. Well, on to our final question, and this is a joke question. You don't have to take this seriously. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Out of you, Chrome, and Drano, who do you think would leave the unit first?
Leave the unit, as in vacate.
As in, I guess life gets in the way, and you decide to leave the server and focus on other things, that kind of stuff.
I mean, the obvious answer is me. I have way more going on in my life and in everything else going on than Drano or Chrome does. So the obvious answer is me. Uh, but I mean, outside of that, I couldn't even begin to guess.
All right. Well, that's all our questions. Oh, that was a 2 hour interview. I'm tired. Thank you so much for having this interview with me, and just thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
You have any?
So I have a quick question.
Yeah,
Are you going to be posting this to your YouTube, or is this?
I'm going to be, if I'm allowed, I'm going to post it to the 55th channel.
Okay.
It'll be the first
Yeah.
video there, I guess.
There
Is it
you
going
go.
to be like at the 55th when it gets released, or what's going to be the deal with that?
You'll have to talk to Kitten. I
Uh,
think she has a game plan in place for the YouTube channel and that stuff. I pretty much let her kind of direct that and try to be the focus there. I'm not. I mean, I try to be hands off with a lot of the advisors on if they need my help, I'm there. I'll be available. But otherwise, I don't want to micromanage anyone. I want to make sure that they feel like they have control over their little that their portion and that they're able to do what they think is right. And then basically we just kind of go from there.
do you have anything to say for the recording before we stop the recording? Anything you want? I guess any statements
Uh,
to the people? A
the
stand
only
to
thing I can think of
address?
is I hope that the vast majority of people have enjoyed the 55th as much as I have. I hope they continue to enjoy the 55th, and I hope that it stays a positive place where a lot of people find friends and just enjoy themselves.
All right. Onyx, you can cut the recording.